This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Aerial XL, built to make sure your rig is seen when it matters most. On scene, visibility saves time and prevents confusion. Aerial XL's illuminated number boards cut through the dark, the smoke, and the chaos, so command and incoming units know exactly where you are. From a truck stage down the block to an engine at the hydrant, your company's identity is clear and unmistakable. Installation is simple, the build is rugged, and every board is engineered for maximum visibility and durability. Aerial XL helps your department stand out, be seen, and stay safe. Check them out at aerialxl.com. That's AIRELXL.com, or call 855-700-0125. Aerial XL, because being seen makes all the difference.
Hey everybody, it's Rob from Frontline Mindset. I'm here with Josh Miller. We are starting from the beginning with him because we had some technical issues with internet and whatnot. But Josh Miller, New Haven Fire Department, he's on Rescue 1. He also has a business called Signal 73 Fire Training. Josh, good morning. Welcome back. I'm happy to have you here, man.
Good morning, Rob. Happy to be here. Yeah, it was interesting trying to get this internet working. Obviously, that's why we're firemen, because we're not inclined with this shit. So that's always difficult for us. But we worked it out. It took a while, but we worked it out.
Yeah.
You know?
IT specialty is not us. So
no, I had to call my 13-year-old stepson to help me figure this out, bro. You know what I mean?
All right, Josh. Let's go into your career. Like you started in the fire service in Briarcliff Manor in 2001.
Correct.
What stands out from those early days as a volunteer for you?
So, well, what I'll say is I always wanted to be a fireman. That's what I wanted to do my whole life. And I think I told you this before. I always wanted to be a fireman. And one of the other paths that I was thinking about doing was becoming a fighter pilot. But I figured out that I was scared of flying and I couldn't fit in the cockpit. So there was a couple things there, obviously. But I always wanted to be a fireman. I remember from a young age, I remember my dad was a caterer, and he had one of his guys come over in a work van. I remember the work van touched off in our driveway, and I must have been, I don't know, 2 or 3 years old. No, I would say probably 4 or 5. But I remember the fire trucks pulling up and getting on the rigs and all that stuff. And I remember just wanting, at that moment to be a fireman, just seeing them go to work and do their thing, and I always wanted to do that. And then down the road, when I was about, I would say 11 or 12, I met a couple of my best friends, and that was Mike and Jeff Bassett. They were 6th-generation firemen. Their dad was a fireman, obviously, long lineage, and they were volunteers in Briarcliff Manor. So I grew up in Ossining, New York. Anybody that knows Sing Sing, Sing Sing Prison up the river. I grew up in Ossining, but Briarcliff Manor is where I joined because you could join younger. And like I said, Jeff and Mike, they were my buddies. I joined with them. I joined as as an explorer, and they're kind of the ones that got me into it. And just from my early years, I just remember, just loving doing everything related to the fire service. It was just amazing, being able to join and doing, and doing the job of a fireman. And for my young years, I just, you never forget, obviously first time you're drilling, first time you're putting on an air pack, first time you're riding the piece, it's just, there was a lot of special times. But I remember one day, specifically, I remember going to the training center, and I remember being like a young kid, just recently, first time I ever put on an air pack. I remember going through all the evolutions, going through, all the different trainings at Westchester County Fire Training Center. Shout out Jimmy Smith, Tom Moriarty. But I remember like going through all these things, and I remember every time I go through an evolution, they're like, "Oh, that's the best one I've seen all day," and I'm like, "This guy's full of shit. Like, this is not the best he's seen all day." But it was just cool, like hearing that, and I was hooked from the second I started. I remember my buddy, like I said, Jeff and Mike, their dad, he was an avid collector of all fire department related memorabilia. So going into the basement, seeing all the code 3s, seeing all the fire department memorabilia, and I just totally hooked.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it was just.
I screwed up because all my stuff is all my code 3
Yeah, there
shit
you go.
is up there.
Hell yeah. Yep. Absolute hell yeah. I love it. So, no, I don't have a collection of that. I don't have any of that myself.
Yeah. How important, Josh, is it for because I mean, you started as an explorer, and those programs, like we had an Explorer program, and sometimes it was a little unfortunately, it just didn't work out in Fairview. But like, how important are programs like that for the youth of the fire service? And I don't just mean young people. Like
Yeah.
our pipeline of people. Like, you are a career firefighter. You came from that youth service, that volunteer service. How important is that?
I mean, I think that's important right off the rip because I think that that's going to let you know whether it's for you or whether it's not for you. I mean, obviously there's learning curves and it takes time for people to get into things, but I think from that time when you start that young, it really gets you ready for the rest. I mean, when I was an explorer, that's how I learned how to, that's how I learned how to put an air pack on, wear an SCBA, fill an air bottle, go through mass confidence. I learned all about the engine. I think it was very, very, very important. It gets you ready for the next step. Like, it's like the probie to being the probie, and it just kind of gets you ready for, okay, when you can ride the apparatus, when you can ride the pieces, you already have that, that foundation. Some guys that join when they're 16, right? If they join at 16, they don't have that foundation yet. They got to start at 16, and now they're joined as a volunteer, and that foundation hasn't been set yet. For me, it was. I knew the terminology, I knew the lexicon, I knew about the apparatus, I knew about the firehouse, I knew about the response district. So I think it really sets a foundation. And then obviously, once I turned, 16, I was riding apparatus. I took fire one when I was 16. It was an awesome time. So I think being an explorer and then being a junior member is very important. So, and to piggyback on that, the reason why I joined Briarcliff instead of Ossining is because I could join younger. So I could start riding apparatus when I was younger. I started riding apparatus when I was 16. In Austin, you couldn't ride till you were 18. So, and actually, the department next to us, Millwood, you could join at 16 and be interior at 16. So, which was awesome too. So,
yeah, that's wild. So like, you turn 16, you become a member of Briarcliff.
yep.
Then you get into EMS as well because they had an ambulance in Briarcliff, right?
Yeah, the good old ambulance, right? No matter what happens, that meat wagon's involved, right? So, so what happened was, when I joined Briarcliff, obviously, I remember, my first job in Briarcliff, even before before getting to the ambulance and all that stuff. I remember my first job in Briarcliff. I remember, like, another time where I just knew I was hooked was first fire I went to. I remember it was like I don't know, it was probably 9:30 at night, and I shouldn't have been riding at that time because the junior members had a cutoff time that they could respond to the firehouse or whatever. I remember going to the firehouse, getting on the apparatus, and I remember getting to the scene. And I think I told you this in the previous podcast. I just remember like smoke pushing out the bay windows of this 2.5 frame. And at that moment, when I saw that smoke, I was just like, "This is the shit." I was like, "This is what the fuck I want to do." I'm like, I was like, "This is awesome." And at that moment, I just, I was again just hooked. And I remember all I wanted to do that night, like I was a junior, so all I could really do was like make the hydrant or whatever. And I was like, let me just make the hydrant. And the pump operator's like, "You're not touching this. Don't touch anything, kid. You're a fucking idiot." And I'm like, "Come on, man." Like, but whatever. He let me do it. But I remember that was a defining moment of when I started. I remember seeing that and just being hooked. But going forward, yeah, the fire department, we also had an EMS, so we also had an ambulance, and I got involved in that too. And I started my EMT program when I was when I was 17, and I got my EMT by the time I was 18. I already had my EMT, so I started riding the ambulance when I was 18. And I remember I was riding the ambulance. They didn't really want you riding the ambulance between 16 and 18 because they thought you were too young for it. But I would always ride as like a third anyway. And they used to break my shot. "Why are you hopping on there? You should." And I was like, whatever. Like half the time the EMT wasn't even in there. There was a driver, and then it was me. But I just wanted to ride the front seat so I could play with the siren. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The cool part.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah. So I ended up doing EMS, and I started. Like I said, I started in Briarcliff doing that. They had an ambulance, so that's kind of where I started with that.
I also started in the ambulance, the volunteer fire service, and we had an ambulance corps, so I started in the ambulance corps at the same time, and such a groundbreaking time because like one of my first jobs was I actually instead of working at the grocery store when I was 18, I was working for Monticello Ambulance.
Yeah.
And like just such a like, and I don't want to ever just a huge responsibility that was kind of put on you at that time. Like kind of crazy, but also like helps you in life because like you're making decisions, and it kind of
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I mean, you're that young, you're making decisions that other kids your age wouldn't be making. I mean, like think about it. Like you're in high school, right? You're in high school, and you're doing CPR on people when you're in high school. You know what I mean? Like nobody else in high school is doing CPR. You know what? They're out, they're getting loaded, going to parties, doing all this stuff, and here you are, you're doing CPR. It's crazy. You're exposed to stuff when you're a lot younger, but I think in a way like that shapes that helps shape you, inform you, and get you ready for the bigger picture and making those emergency decisions. A lot of people, a lot of good firemen, like they did ride the ambulance, and I think that the ambulance, it sucks, but the one thing about it is no offense to anyone that really actually likes it, but the ambulance does, the ambulance, it's tough. And I think what it does, though, is it gets you ready for those emergency situations, and operating those emergency situations. And it kind of prepares you. It's kind of a framework for the situations you're going to encounter when you get to like the fireside, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it was Why
are you working in Greg's room?
Yeah.
What happened to Greg's room? No, Dad, why are you in Greg's room?
Never fails.
It's all right, man.
Never fails. So, going back to the ambulance, though, it does prepare you. It does get you ready for a lot of things, and I think that it shapes you. I think that you see a lot of things, but you learn from a young age how to deal with those things. And I would never trade any of those experiences for anything. I mean, those experiences shape who you are and how you handle situations. I mean,
well, and prepares you to communicate with people. I mean, you have no choice but to ask tough questions and talk to people, and then and especially in the fire service, because that's like you've got to talk to the senior man of the house, you got to talk to the officer, you got to talk to the citizens. Like you're going to be that one interacting. So like it's just there's so many layers of this. Now you take this experience, and then you end up working in Manhattan and the Bronx. Kind of walk us through this story, because this is an interesting take on how things happen.
Yeah. So what happened was I got my EMT, so I started riding in Briarcliff, and I remember when I was riding in Briarcliff, I remember I needed to get a job, right? And I needed to either get a job or I needed to go to college or whatever I needed to do, right? My dad's like, you got to figure it out, okay? So like little excerpt here, shortcut. You might not even know this, but I got hired by Horry County, South Carolina. I don't know if I ever told you that.
No.
But I got hired by Horry County, South Carolina. So I went down there, right? So when I think I got hired at 18. So I went down there. My buddy got hired by Henrico. My buddy Mike Bassett, he got hired by Henrico. He's a lieutenant there now, and I got hired by Horry County. So I go down to Horry County, and I'm like, this is not for me. Like, I'm like, I love the Northeast. Like, I'm from up this way. So I'm like down there, legitimately down there probably a week, right? And I'm like, this is not my bag. So I'm like, all right, let me head back. So I go back north, right? I go back north, and I get home. My dad's like, listen, like I said, you're either going to college, you got to get a job, blah, 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 whatever. I said, all right, Dad. I said, I know, college obviously isn't for me. And I did do a couple years at Westchester County Community College, also known as Harvard on the Hudson. So I did a couple years there, but he's like, you got to get a job. So all right. So my dad, he's a caterer. He actually had a connection with somebody at New York Presbyterian that actually donates a lot of money there. And New York Presbyterian Hospital, it's very hard to get there. So New York City has a whole bunch of ambulances, but they can't cover all their EMS. There's just so much EMS. So there's participating hospitals that do 911. So I got hired by. So anyway, my dad, he had this connection, right? And it would take forever to get hired by New York Presbyterian. Like it was not easy to get a job there. So I remember I went for my interview, and I wrote down who my contact was, my hook, so to speak. And by the time I drove from Manhattan back to Westchester County, my phone at home was ringing, and it's like, hey, we need you to come back for your physical or whatever. You're getting hired. So, which was like unheard of back in the day at New York Presbyterian. So I got hired at New York Presbyterian at I think I had just turned 19. I got hired at New York Presbyterian, and I started working EMS in the Bronx and Manhattan. So it was just very eye opening. So I grew up 20 minutes north of the Bronx. So I mean, I went to the city very, very often, but I mean, obviously I didn't work EMS. So I remember, starting doing EMS, like it was hilarious because I would come home, my dad would be like, hey, can you tell me the story? Like my dad liked hearing the stories because it was just the crazy shit that I would encounter. I worked in Midtown, I worked in Washington Heights, I worked in Inwood, and I learned everything. You learn just so much stuff. Like I worked in Washington Heights and Inwood, like I learned every kind of dialect of Dominican, like every kind of Spanish you could learn. Like I learned everything. You know what I mean? It was just it was interesting from neighborhood to neighborhood. You just the culture was different, the people were different, and you see a lot of crazy shit. And it's just it's eye-opening, but it's just like it's a constant grind. Like they're constantly crushing you with call after call after call.
It's a system. Like it really is.
It is. Yeah.
How did that period shape your like fireground decision making later? Like what did you grab out of that kind of helped shape your career in emergency services?
So I think one thing was obviously, I mean, there's one that you're dealing with the people, right? So you're dealing with all these people. You know how to deal with people. Know how to socialize with your clientele, so to speak. You know how to talk to them. You know how to communicate with the people that you're providing service to. That's one thing. Another thing, really though, is emergency decision making. You're making decisions based on the information that you have, and it's just you and a partner most of the time. There was ALS, but the ALS that was available, you didn't want to call them because I think we talked about this. At one point in the previous podcast, we talked about sometimes. It's always been like, hey, let's ALS everything or let's BLS everything. And at that time, it was like, hey, let's BLS everything. So you didn't want to call ALS. Like if you called them, you better have a good reason or they're just going to be pissed off. Like, why am I here? What am I doing? Like, why the hell am I here for this BS? So a lot of times, you didn't call ALS and you BLS things that you probably should have ALS'd.
Right.
But you were making decisions and you were, and I think it helps, it helps you. Grow as a person that's dealing with these with these incidents on a regular basis. I mean, it just helps that split second decision making. It's not necessarily the same decisions you're going to make on the fire round, but it's helping you with those emergency situations. I think that experience is invaluable. I see a lot of guys come into the fire service that didn't even have volunteer experience or they didn't have EMS experience and they don't know how to make those decisions yet. And they have to learn that, right out of the academy. And you're already behind the curve,
Right.
If you really want this to be your job and be your passion and do this career, you gotta stay ahead of the curve, so to speak.
Josh, just for people who are listening, because I think this brings in a good context of the EMS experience in New York City. It's often thought of like this FDNY, it's resource rich, there's a paramedic on every corner. It's not like that. What are some of the calls that you bought in BLS that most agencies in the United States would be like, wait, that's a BLS run?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, from you want to talk about basic stuff. I mean, you'd have asthma attacks, you'd have, cardiac emergencies, you'd have, unconsciouses. There's all sorts of things that the medic wasn't available for, and you just had to work with what you had,
including shootings and stabbings and traumas.
I mean, you had shootings, stabbings, traumas, hangings, jumpers up, jumper down. There was tons of stuff that you just encountered on a regular basis that you would have to. I mean, listen, there was somebody gets shot in the leg or whatever. We'd BLS it, you know what I mean? Shot in the arm, BLS it. A lot of places would be like, oh, we got to have a medic on board. There was no medics available, you know what I mean? Guy got stabbed in the chest. Hey, there's no medic available. You got to do what you got to do. You got to also remember in New York City, for the most part, there's a hospital like every 10 blocks, you know what I mean? So chances are you're going to find, not every 10 blocks, but there's close hospitals. Right. So chances are you're going to get them there quick. Another thing though was that you had the fire department. So if the fire department, if we got on scene, the fire department would take a 91, meaning that if we were on scene, fire department would go in service. But if we had, CPR, ALS call, fire department would be there. If you needed them, they'd ride in with you. That was another resource that you had, kind of to your avail. But the decision making, you had to decide whether you were going to take this BLS or you were going to take this ALS.
Yeah.
So all sorts of stuff. I mean, I remember, I think there was one time where we like delivered twins or something like that, and there was no ALS, and like we're giving oxygen to one twin, holding the other, and I'm like, where the fuck's the medic? And they're like, yeah, no, all right, whatever, At least that time I didn't have to pick up the afterbirth. That always sucked.
What was so you ended up going to the District of Columbia?
Yeah.
What was the adjustment like from taking that EMS experience, the experiences in Briarcliff, and going down there?
So, I mean, I just want to start out by saying like DC was unbelievable. My time in Maryland too, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit, was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And I really learned about being a fireman and the job. I mean, obviously it started in Briarcliff, but really a lot of my foundational stuff came from DC and Maryland, and DCFD is just a great, phenomenal department, and I loved working there. But we'll talk about why I had to, why I decided to go. But I mean, it was a great, phenomenal department, and just the way they fought fires was just it was amazing. They're a very aggressive department, and very proactive. It was a great job, and I think it got me ready for that because hey, I started on it. So I working the EMS, doing all that stuff. I already had that foundation, right? And then obviously in DC you got to ride the ambulance too. But the EMS prepared me, and my fire experience from being a volley prepared me for the next step. What I will say was you go into the academy. The academy's like the DC's academy was ridiculous. It was legit an academy. So it was very interesting. But it got me ready. It got me ready for that.
Yeah. What? Where did you work in DC?
So first off, I'll start with the academy. So the academy, I remember we got there, and a lot of people in the fire service know him, but his name's Cadillac. So Alvarado, he was in DC for a long time. I think he just retired, and I remember we got there. We reported to the academy at it was 4:30, 5 in the morning. And I remember he was there. He had his drill instructor hat, and he's yelling at us. He's like, "What the fuck are you looking at? Why are you eyeballing it?" He just totally scared the shit out of us, right? So we're there doing push-ups in our suits and everything like that. And then we get broken up into three different groups. So one group's going to be the fast track, the fast track academy. One group's going to be hey, you got to do the full thing, and one group's the medium paced academy. So at the time we got split up into three groups. I didn't know where I was, I didn't know why I was going into the group I went into, but because of the group I went into, I got to go through the fast track academy because I had certs that I didn't even realize I had. So I lucked out there. I lucked out with this too, but at the time I didn't feel like I lucked out with was I got one of my instructors, Ryan Kephart. All right. Ryan Kephart was awesome. I don't know if he's still on the job in DC, but he was assigned to Truck 17. He was a Marine, and his brother was a drill instructor, and he just knew how to scare the shit out of people, and he tortured all of us. I mean, I remember the Marine Corps' birthday, and we were out doing towers in the morning for the Marine Corps' birthday, and every floor we would get to, we'd be like, "Happy birthday, Marine Corps!" And this was 4:30 in the morning. I remember the deputy chief of training or the captain of training came down, and he was like, "Kephart, what the fuck are you doing?" And he was like, "Marine Corps birthday, sir," and we're just going to town, right? But this guy, what he sent home was attention to detail. He sent home attention to detail. He even made sure that everybody had everybody had the same razor, everybody had the same shaving cream. I was scared. He was like, "If you don't have this big 3 razor blade," he's like, "I'm gonna know." So I was like, all right. So we all used that same one. And I remember one day somebody didn't shave. What happened? We're dry shaving in the hallway. There's blood all over the floor. It looked like a murder scene. I'm like, Jesus Christ, So I mean, it was just absolutely wild. He just, but he sent home, the attention to detail, and that was really important, especially with learning about all the different things that DC has to offer. So that was the academy. All right. So fast forward, get through the academy. Don't know how, but got through the academy. I mean, this academy was no joke. This taught me another thing too, right? The accountability. Person next to you, the person to the left. One person fucks up, everybody fucks up. All right. So Burn Center comes in, right? MedStar, Burn Center comes in. They're giving a lecture on the Burn Center, burn victim, all this stuff. So in the lecture, right, I go doze off, right? So I doze off in the lecture. Well, to my left, I had Matt Leonard on one side of me. You know Matt. He's the chief of Hyattsville and also a DC fireman. I had Matt Leonard on one side of me, this kid Mick on the other side of me. And I remember I fall asleep, and after I fell asleep, like Kephart looks in the window and he's like pointing at me and he's like, that one right there. And the other guy's one of the DC guys that's already on the job is like ratting me out. He's like, yep, that's the guy. So I get outside. As soon as we get outside, he's like, everybody hit the tower. And then he says, Mr. Miller, he goes, I have a little special treat for you, Matt and Nick. So as everybody's running towers, we're at the bottom of the tower doing flutter kicks, monkey buckers, leg lifts, all these mountain climbers, all this stuff. Leonard ripped the bottom of his foot off. He had like the fake skin on the bottom of his foot. But we're doing all this crazy shit, right? I can't do any more flutter kicks. He grabs my legs. He goes, oh, sir. He goes, Mr. Miller, you can't do it yourself? Here, let me help you out. 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3. And he's grabbing my legs, moving my legs around for me because I can't move them. And as the whole time he's going, ring the bell, like he wants me. I'm like, I won't ring the bell, sir. But that taught me all. Like one person messes up, they all mess up, right? So I messed up that day, but there was plenty of times afterwards that other people messed up, and one person screwed up, we all screwed up. So that taught me accountability. But moving forward, and I can own my mistakes too. Trust me, I talk about that all the time. But moving forward, I get assigned to 2-engine. So I get assigned to 2-engine downtown, which is in Chinatown. Nickname was Orient Express. So I get assigned there, and that's where Rescue Squad 1. So I get assigned to Chinatown, and a lot of that down there is like smells and bells. There's not a lot of fire duty. I mean, sometimes you go to 10 engines area, 6 engines area, things like that. But there really wasn't any first due work there. That was really that's the DC experience. You know what I mean? Like Independence Avenue, Constitution Avenue,
all the monuments and stuff.
All the monuments, exactly.
Congress,
FBI headquarters, all that stuff. That's all there. All the law enforcement buildings, that's all down there. So that was kind of like that was the downtown experience, high rises, things like that.
There was a story I remember this the other day, and I don't know if I dreamed this up or what, but you were working. And there was a sergeant who was retiring, and because the concert halls right now, like, didn't he like take the engine out of service and like grab you? And he was like, yeah,
no, that wasn't me. That was that. So my my friend, so the kid that worked there, Gerald Nix. So Gerald Nix, we used to call him Stevie Nicks, but Gerald Nix. That or shitbag, one or the other. But no, the Nix was hilarious, man. He was at 2-engine, and he told a story about this guy back in the day.
Okay.
And this guy back in the day, I guess he took like 2-engine out of service and went across the street to the Capital One Center, because like where the Capital One Center, where I don't even know if it's Capital One anymore, but the center across the street is where they had concerts, the Capitals played, all that, and he took the engine out of service to go to like a Metallica concert. So he goes to the Metallica concert, and like he comes back and he's going like like he's playing the air guitar, right? He's like, so he comes back, and his name was Ron, so they started calling him Rockin' Ronnie. So they're like, yo, Rockin' Ronnie came back, So, but all the other companies are like, why are we running 2-engines calls? Like, what is going on here? And it was because he was at the Metallica con. That's the story that and that's allegedly, like, that's the story that
allegedly happened.
Allegedly that happened. That's what Nick's told me. I don't know. This is a long time. I don't know how true that was, but I mean, it was a great story. But I could totally see, like, thinking about that officer, I could totally see that.
So you end up getting out of this company, and you go to Engine 32. What was Engine 32 like?
So, well, just going back to 2-engine, I mean, when I was at 2-engine, I had Rescue Squad 1 with me, and those guys were like the best of the best. Like, those guys were awesome. And really, the guy that, there's a couple guys there, Dennis Carmody and Phil Jervis, and then the squad wagon driver, Pat Boone, they were all phenomenal. And Carmody, he was another torture device. I mean, going to work with him, he would ride me like a used pony. Like, he just destroyed me. You know what I mean? And but he just kept me accountable for everything. He taught me a lot, even though he broke my chops all the time. Like, Phil would break my chops, but not teach me. And Phil, if you ever watch this, I love you too. But But Dennis would just destroy me, but he drilled me on everything, and he taught me a lot too, and I owe a lot to him. And like I said, Pat Boone, who was the squad wagon driver, he had a ton of time on the job, and he was another DC legend, and he was a great dude, taught me a lot as well. But being with those guys was a totally different tempo, like learning from them was just a totally different experience, because they were just so dialed in, these guys, and they just knew their stuff. So it was awesome. It was awesome being in that firehouse and learning from them. But fast forward to 32 engine. So I go to 32 engine, which is Southeast DC, and it was great. Like I absolutely love 32 engine, and the reason why I wanted to go there, I was in the 3rd Battalion, and across the river is where they were catching the fires, and that's where I wanted to go. So I transferred to 32, and I happened to end up on the shift that had the best wagon driver in the city, Ron Little. He did 32 years at 32 engine, and he just was an absolute beast. Like, this dude, he did not miss. I mean, he hit every street, knew every alleyway, every lay. He knew 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th through areas. I mean, he was just. It was unbelievable what Ron knew, and learning from him was tremendous. And then on the truck, I had this guy, Mark Colbert, driving, and Paul Patterson with a Tillerman, and Mark just got promoted to lieutenant, and Paul is now a battalion chief, and they were just tremendous. I learned a ton from them, and it was cool, because my first day on 2 engine, I went on a transfer to a firehouse that was at a fire, and then went to a whole bunch of AFAs and BS. My first day at 32 engine, I started out the day with an auto fire, a couple dumpster fires, another auto fire, and then a job. So my first day at 32 engine, a lot different than my first day at 2 engine. So needless to say, I ended up in the right place. And I loved it. But with that came, with that came Ambulance 32 also, which was called the Soul Crusher. So, with that came the Soul Crusher.
What was the difference between the ambulance in DC and the ambulance in New York?
I mean, there wasn't really too much of a difference. I mean, they both got crushed just equally as bad. I mean, there was times in DC where you do 20 EMS runs in a 24. So it was, and transports as well. If anything, the hospitals were a little bit farther than they were in New York. But I mean, the ambulance was definitely just as busy. I mean, it was just as busy. So, and the engine was busy too. So I was assigned to a paramedic engine. So the paramedic engine's, getting its nuts kicked in, because it's got the medic on it.
Yeah.
With the medic on it. So, but I mean, I remember doing, and it's funny because it puts you in certain situations. So my buddy, I had this one buddy in DC that he loved EMS. His nickname was Trauma Hawk. I called him Trauma Hawk. My buddy Jeff. God bless him. Anyway, I remember one night we had a shooting right near the firehouse, and they wanted to land the bird to take the shooting victim to MedStar. So they call for the helicopter, right? So we go to the landing zone. So the helicopter is calling me. I'm driving Ambulance 32. The helicopter, all of a sudden, it's like Eagle 1 to Ambulance 32. Eagle, and I'm like, Ambulance 32. It's like, am I clear? Is my landing zone clear? Am I good to land? Do I have any overhead obstructions? I'm like, this guy's really asking me. I'm a total moron. This guy's asking me if his landing zone's clear. I'm like, what is this, Vietnam? I'm like, yeah, you're all set. I got no idea, But it was. But I'm like, what the fuck is it? So anyway, it was just funny. It put you saw the same thing that you saw in New York. You had in the area that I was in, ton of traumas, ton of shootings, ton of stabbings. It was just, it was a constant. The one thing that was different though is, I will say I think the shootings were more. And I think also I think the shootings were more, and I think that
it's wild.
Yeah, you also in New York, every time you went on an EMS run, you had a cop with you. In DC, there was no cop, and I just remember we would pull up to certain neighborhoods, and we would pull up to certain houses, and you just look at where you were at, and you'd be like I really don't want to get out here. You know what I mean? There was some there were some areas that were like that there. So
I remember Leonard and Mitch gave me directions to go to AMD, and they drove and these fucking blowjobs sent me through Southeast, where I came out into Seat Pleasant. But when I was in Southeast, I had the window cracked.
Yeah.
And some dude was like, "Hey, white boy, you don't belong here.
Yeah.
Get out." And I'm like, "I'm on my way, man. I'm trying."
Yeah.
Like,
I'm trying to give you good directions.
Yeah. It was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Mitch
and Leonard.
Yeah. Thanks, Mitch and Leonard. Yep. That's great.
But
So very interesting.
So it brings me into this. These two guys that we just mentioned are also members of the Hyattsville Volunteer Fire Department, and Josh and I, that's where our paths crossed. I actually thought his name was Jerry when I first met him. I don't know how the hell
Jerry?
that happened.
Jesus, Jerry.
Who's Jerry?
Who's Jerry? Who the hell is Jerry?
But like, talk to me about Hyattsville, because like it's such a unique experience, and you're down in DC, you're working for the District of Columbia, but you can't get enough, and you come to this volunteer firehouse on Bellcrest Road.
Yeah, so I mean, DC was great, and I got to run my fires there, and it was and it was a blast, and like especially at 32, that's where I really that was a good time, and so I actually had started the process for Hyattsville before I actually got on a job in DC. So I started the process for Hyattsville before I got on a job in DC, and when I was in DC, all the guys that I was working with too, they were also volunteers. In the county somewhere, or a lot of guys I was working with, they were volunteers in the county, and in addition to that, one of the guys that Matt Loria, who's on a job in Norwalk now, aka Nancy, he was from Westchester, so I knew him from Westchester, and he actually was the first one to introduce me to coming down to Hyattsville. So anyway, I doing all this stuff, and I'm like, you know what, I want to continue doing this on my day off. So every day that I wasn't. Every day that I wasn't in DC, every day that I wasn't there, I was in Hyattsville. And what was so great about Hyattsville is it was just 24/7, like guys that wanted to be there. It wasn't like, hey, this is just like obviously for the fire service, for the most part, guys that are in the fire department or at the fire, for the most part, guys want to be there. That's what they want to do. But then you have the people that they're just doing it for either the paycheck, schedule, whatever the fuck it is. They're just there for that. Hyattsville,
fireman.
Yeah, exactly. These guys wanted to be there, and that's what made it so great. There was so much pride in that firehouse, and like that's another like agency that I learned so much from as far as being a fireman. I mean, they sent home, engine company operations, throwing ladders, forcible entry, just everything, and working independently too. And Hyattsville was just a great place because so many people had the same thought about everything. Like it would be 9 o'clock at night and guys would be like, hey, let's go out and drill, let's go out and do this, let's go out, run lines, whatever it is. And it was just awesome. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Hyattsville.
Yeah, I think of just like the stuff that I learned from Jimmy Butler out of mindset and just repetition and skills and stuff. And it wasn't that was the one thing I think I tell people all the time, that it wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't like they were like setting up like these spectacular hauling systems off the squad, although we did that every now and then. It was basics, because basics is what got you on the fire ground and got you accomplishing the job. So it was a wild time, and it was something I know, like I tell, if anybody's ever like, man, I want to be a better fireman, I'm like, hey, if you can go to the Wayward Home of Lost Firefighters, go to Hyattsville.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean that place was definitely cool, and I had a total blast there. And I think I might have the record for most suspensions from that place. It might be like me or Matt Westerbeck, I don't know, but I might have like the record for most suspensions from there. I remember we had one of the first fires I had there. I remember I hopped on the engine as like the extra guy. Needless to say, one of the other guys had to get a ride home from one of the Hyattsville PD, because we had the chief showed up. He's like, why is there like 17 people on here? There's no seatbelts. What the hell? I'm like, oh yeah, well somebody hopped on extra, right? So that was one time. Mitch tore me up for that one, right? Then I had another one. I think me and Westerbeck should have been throwing ladders, and I think we ended up in the fire department. There was a collapse in the fire department. That didn't end too well for us. And then that was a special night. Westerbeck and me were supposed to be throwing ladders, and he ends up with third-degree burns on his ear. So that was good. And then I remember, I'll never forget this one. Right, so we had a job. We had a job. I forget who's first due. Maybe Seven's first due or Nine. I can't remember. But anyway, I think again, like I was supposed to be throwing ladders or some shit like that, and I was like, "Pfft, I'm dumping in." So I remember like I get there, I go inside, right, and me and this guy from Bladensburg find this dude on the third floor, right? So we find this dude on the third floor. Whatever, we pull him out, take him down the stairs, right? Guy, unfortunately, succumbed to his injuries, whatever. But I remember, like, afterwards, like, Butler says to me, he goes, "Yo, man, good job." I'm like, "Thanks." He goes, "Now what the fuck were you doing?" And I go, I was like, I threw a ladder. "You didn't throw a ladder." I go, I went past one." So, like, yeah, so needless to say, I got a 3-day rip for that, and I always joke around. I go, the guy from Bladensburg went to Medal Day. I got suspended, so I always joke around,
Right.
But yeah, so
like how there's a serious thing here about this. Like, you were suspended, there was accountability, and that was one thing that I
100%.
think, because it goes to this other side of the conversation. I remember during Firehouse Expo, you bringing people down from Westchester, and one of the interesting things about Hyattsville was that there will be a night, like, you'll have a Seagrave tractor drawn aerial with a 19-year-old driving it, a 19-year-old tiller in it, and a 20-year-old in the front seat.
Yep.
And I'm in the back listening to these guys as like the oldest person there.
Sure.
And like they're, because of that discipline, because of that accountability, it
Yep.
works, and it's a system that, like, you go into other firehouses and they're like, no, there's no way we'd let young people drive the tower ladder, because there's so much, like the accountability was there, and they were tuned in. They knew they're some of the best firefighters that I know, and I'll say it, in the country, were the ones who I rode with in Hyattsville.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, some of the best firemen that I ever worked with, Jimmy being one of them. Came out of Hyattsville, and it's funny, like it really does hold you accountable. And I make jokes out of it now that I got suspended and all that stuff, because I make jokes out of it now, and but the truth was, like, the guys held you to a higher standard, and the guys held you accountable, and everybody in the firehouse held you accountable. It wasn't just one person, it wasn't just the chief. It wasn't just like, everybody held everybody accountable, and everybody knew, there was a lot of pride in that firehouse. You wanted to make sure you ran every address right. You wanted to make sure you stuck every building right. You wanted to make sure you pulled every line correctly. So there's a ton of accountability there. And that was very, very important to the mission of that place.
Yeah.
I think what's very interesting about Hyattsville is that it's produced so many people in the fire service in so many different walks of life. I mean, one of the guys that works with me now in my company, Jimmy Lee, he's a New York City fireman, but he also started his time at Hyattsville, and he was also a DC fireman. So it was just it's just very interesting how, like, paths will cross based on that place. Guys that started out there, guys that did time there. It produced a lot of good, firemen, cops, military personnel. I mean, like, that place is just, was a real launch pad for a lot of people. So I loved it.
So
I loved it.
It's like I said, man, there's always going to be a place near and dear in my heart with Hyattsville. So you end up between and all this experience, DC and Hyattsville and everything, you come up to a point where you're going to make a decision, and the opportunity arrives for you to go to New Haven, Connecticut.
Yep.
You get up to New Haven.
Yep.
You work Engine 6, Truck 4, Squad 1, and now Rescue 1.
Yep.
What did each assignment teach you, and how did that prepare you eventually for Rescue 1?
Well, first off, my decision to go to New Haven, like, so growing up as a buff, you knew the busy places, right? I always knew that Hartford was a busy place. I always knew New Haven was a busy job. I always knew, all these different places, Bridgeport. I knew all these places that were busy jobs. And in DC, there was always part of me that wanted to, come back north. I still wanted to be close to the family. My half brother and half sister were still really young. I wanted to, spend time with them as they grew up. And part of me really wanted to go home. And in addition to that, like, just the beating we were taking on the ambulance was, like, unmerciful. It was just nonstop. But like one of the main reasons I wanted to come back was I just wanted to come back north, and I saw New Haven was hiring, and I'm like, this is unbelievable. Like, and in my mind, I'm like that. Like to me, New Haven was one of the end all be all spot. Like I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna get hired there. There's absolutely no way. And I took the test. I'll never forget. Dan Lyden called me, and he goes, did you see your name on New Haven's list? And I go, no. He goes, bro. He goes, your number, and he tells me, and I'm like, and he's like, I swear. And I'm like, get the fuck. I'm like, no. He's like, dude, go look at it. So I go, so I'm calling New Haven's Human Resources. I'm like, ma'am, are you sure this is me? She's like, sir, are you so-and-so? I'm like, yeah. She's like, it's you. I'm like, do you want to check with my social? And she's like, sir, do you want me to take you off the list? And I'm like, no, I'm good. So anyway, right. So I'm like, yeah, I'm like, shit, man. I'm like, this is unbelievable. So I get the call from New Haven, go up there, do all the things, go through everything, get through everything, and I get on the job, right? So I get on the job, I go through the academy. Frank Ritchie was my drill master. Then I had my director of training was Matt Marcarelli, and Chief Marcarelli was unbelievable. Like, and he still is. He's a chief in East Haven, Connecticut now, and he was on a job in New Haven for a long time. And he, obviously I learned a lot. I learned a lot from him, and as well as Frank. And these guys were around in New Haven when they're obviously New Haven was going to a lot more fires, where like every other place. But I learned a ton from them, and I was lucky enough to get assigned to Engine 6, and Engine 6 was the busiest engine in the city. And at that time, I think Engine 6 was doing like 4,100 runs a year, and that was the busiest engine. Now, fast forward 11, 12 years later, it's now doing closer to 6,000 runs a year. So it's a busy engine. So staying at Engine 6, right, it kept in line with like what I was used to being busy, right, which was awesome. And we continued to drill on our own there. So like the engine obviously gets you ready for everything else, right? So on the engine, I'm continuing to do the EMS like I was doing before, right? So that gets you ready for that decision making, okay, and making decisions on your own. I'm working on the engine, so it gets me ready. I know how many lengths I need to a certain location. I know what kind of stretches and hose loads we're going to do, right? We used to have a wheel that we would measure out, the how long, like, how far it was to the building, all that stuff. So you go over all your lays, you go over all your basic things. And I was lucky enough to have one of the, best lieutenants on the job. His name is Teo Baldwin. He's still, he retired as a battalion chief, and he was a phenomenal officer. And the guys that I had on the truck with me, they were fantastic. So I was signing the engine, but on the truck you had Jimmy Fitz and Johnny D, and these two guys. Jimmy Fitz is now retired. Johnny D, he's at another company now. But these guys were, they were the roof crew. Like they did not miss any roof. They got every stick. They got every hole. Like these guys were true roof guys. And the one thing I'll say about New Haven, like the guys that go to the roof, like they're just fantastic. I mean, like it's not the roofs we have in New Haven are not easy. I mean, the 12 pitches, they're steep as hell. Like it's like climbing up a 90-degree angle. And these guys are just like they're just killing it. So New Haven has like a really, really good culture of roof work and vertical ventilation. A lot of places won't cut, peaked roofs, but New Haven, like does it better than anybody I've ever seen. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so after that, I remember, so I go over to, I end up getting transferred to another shift on the truck, and but I remember, so Jimmy and Johnny D, truck driver Tillerman, I remember they're in the firehouse, and like one of the first days I was in the firehouse, I'm like sitting in the back of the tiller bucket, they're like, and they're holding their cup of coffee, and they're looking at me, and they're like, yeah, what's up, man? And I'm like, hey, what's up? They're like, yeah, what do you know about Tiller? And I'm like, oh yeah, like, so I didn't know how to, like, I was kind of like nervous about. I'm like, oh yeah, like I've driven a Tiller like this, like this is kind of like the sister truck to like one of the trucks that I drove in Maryland, and Johnny D turns to Fitz, he goes, did you hear that, man? This is like one of the sister trucks, like he's breaking my shot, and I'm like, yeah, like, but I ended up going through the motions on it. So I get qualified on the engine, then I go through the motions. I get qualified, to drive the front of the truck, tiller the truck. So I did that as well. So that was awesome. Obviously, that comes its own challenges, knowing your different ladder heights, knowing your different air or your ladder placement, how you're going to place the area or place the aerial. In New Haven we have a lot of obstacles, right? We got a lot of wires, a lot of things like that. Nothing is below ground New Haven. Everything's above, right? So we always got to figure out how to stick things, the best way to do it. And guys in New Haven always manage to get the stick, and they just do a great job, and they start that from the academy, going over that kind of stuff with them. But I continued that, at the truck. and then after, while I was at Dixwell Station for a while. I used to call it Dixwell Station, Engine 6 and Truck 4. After a while, I was just kind of like, yeah, man, I want to, I want something, I want something more. I want to do like more in my career. Some people want to promote, some people want to go fire marshal, whatever. I want to go to squad. So I ended up going to the squad. So New Haven had 2 squads, Squad 1 and Squad 2, east and west side of the city. And the squads, did all the technical rescue, the extrications, all that stuff. And that's, and everything before that had prepared me for that. Even, riding the rescue in Hyattsville, all that stuff kind of started preparing me for that. And that's kind of the way it went for me,
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Now, you got to, or one of the things I want to ask you is that, like, what's unique about New Haven's building stock? You talked about the roofs,
Yeah.
and the quality, and because all this comes into keeping your current assignment on Rescue 1 pretty sharp.
Yeah. Anyway, what I do want to say is the squads ended up combining. They turned it. So we already had Engine 8, but the squads kind of combined. They turned Engine 8 into like basically an enhanced engine, so to speak. So Engine 8 still has all the tools, all that kind of, Engine 8 has the tools, has the rope equipment, all that stuff. A lot of it mirrors what Rescue 1 has on it. But anyway, the squads there was a different alignment of the department, and then the rescue came into inception. So when the rescue started, all the members from Squad 1 and Squad 2 for the most part went to the rescue company. But nothing's it's still we still do the same thing. We just we don't have hose or water anymore, So it's we still do the same job. But as far as New Haven's building stock, it's very unique. Okay, New Haven is very interesting because it has Yale. Okay, and then it has its lesser desirable areas and areas like that. But the building stock is very interesting because you have buildings that were built in the 1800s, 1700s, 1800s. You have all these buildings that were built by Yale, and then a majority of what we have in our areas are 2.5-story wood frame buildings. So a lot of what we deal with in New Haven is fighting fires in 2.5-story balloon frame buildings. A lot of places, some places deal with raised ranches, some places deal with single family private dwelling. We deal with a lot of multifamily 2.5-story frames. So I mean, there's a lot of tells and signs that can help you out with all these different buildings that that they have in common. But staying sharp with knowing your building stock is very important. So for example, like a 2.5 frame, I know if there's exterior stacked porches in the front of it, 9 times out of 10 you're gonna have stairs in the front that get you all the way to the top floor, and stairs in the rear that get you all the way to the top floor. Okay, I know that for New Haven. I also know that I'm most likely gonna have living space on every single floor. If it can be inhabited, there's gonna be living space up there. All right, so knowing that is very important. A lot of things of what we're seeing like people living in the basement of restaurants now too. That's a big thing, right? You got these people that, your Chinese, see them in Chinese restaurants all the time, right? The people living in the basement, the workers living down there, and then, coming up during the day to work. So, that's very unique. So you have all these, 2.5-story wood frames, which pose their challenges. That you're going to have, most likely you're going to have fire on multiple floors. And keeping up with your size ups and your I forget, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but
You have to know the place that you have to be in the puzzle because
Sure. Sure.
you just got to know where you fit into the play.
And the one thing about balloon frame or most of the buildings we run, it's not so much where the party's at, but where the party's gonna be. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times it's like the fire's here right now, but within about 5 to 10 minutes it's gonna be here. So you have to make the right move, and you have to make the right move based on the information you have, and obviously. All the different signs, smoke, fire, whatever it might be, you have to use all these things to find, the correct location. So, but yeah, it's very interesting.
What's different on the rescue company compared to the engine or the truck that you found?
As far as the rescue goes, I think that the rescue is very. Hold on one second. I just want to hit something here. As far as the rescue goes, I think that the rescue is very. It's obviously very independent, right? So, I think on the rescue you really have to be a thinker, because I think it's not that there's only plan A. there's plan A, B, C, and D. And I think, you know, in Hyattsville that was sent home too, right? The squad officer always had plan A, but the squad driver always needed to have like plan B, C, and you know what I mean? Like the squad officer, it was always like thinking ahead. And I think that with the rescue company, you really have to be an independent thinker. I think that, you know, you really have to honestly like take the bull by the horns. If you have the idea and you need to make a move, you need to make a move. You know, you need to know how to fire when it's good, when it's no good. And I think that, you know, our job is to support the operations of the other companies, right? Like I'm always listening up to the radio, to the other companies, right? Because I want to hear what they're doing and how they're making out and where they might need help. So our main job on the fire ground, right, per our SOGs is search, right? But sometimes obviously we're always doing our searches, but at the same time we're helping with other things, right? We're helping the line get in place. We're making sure that, you know, doors are forced. We're making sure the searches are getting underway. We're helping with the, you know, searching for fire. We're supplementing the engine and the truck. But it's not just like, hey, on the engine you grab the nozzle, you go put the fire out, right? On a truck, okay, I know I'm going to search, you know, floor 1 or floor 2. Now you're like looking at the big picture. It's not just here anymore. It's now you're looking at the big picture, and you have to see what everybody else on the fire ground's doing too. It can't just be, you know, that one. I always said to people, like on the engine, you know, like you could be coned up and go straight into, and who cares? You know what I mean? Like you got the nozzle, you're putting the fire out, right? Then the truck, right? Your vision gets a little bit bigger, right? Now the rescue company, your vision gets even bigger because you're looking at the whole situation and you're thinking about things even beyond that, right? Is the building susceptible to collapse? Is the building compromised in certain locations? It's not just your basic engine and truck work, but the foundation starts with the engine and truck.
Mm-hmm. That you couldn't have said that. You got me speechless on that one. You hit that one out of the park. Let's shift gears. Signal 73 fire training, a business that you started. What pushed you to start this fire training business?
So I initially had another fire training business, and then we ended up doing our own thing essentially. And I wanted to continue fire training. I love it. I just love being involved in the fire service on a regular basis, and I love I just like being in it 24/7, just keeping my mind in it, and it just what I love to do. And I remember saying to my wife, I'm like, maybe I'm not going to do this anymore. Maybe I'll do. And she's like, yeah, okay, and then a week later, I'm starting to get things ready for Signal 73. So for just a little background, so there's a few things, right? So Signal 73, I'm paying homage to to my job, right? So Signal 73 in New Haven is a working fire, okay? So that's what Signal 73 means. And I want to pay homage to that job because that job's done so much for me, and and I love being on the job there so much, and I love being a fireman in that city. It's really, really special to me, and I wanted that to be part of how I portrayed my company. And in addition to that, if you can see on my hat here, all right, so it's the steam engine pulled by the horses. So it's kind of hard to see, maybe. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like the steam engine. All right. So the reason I picked that, it's not just a stock image. There's two reasons behind that. One reason is because in Briarcliff, where I started, their patch is the steam engine pulled by the horses. Okay. So that's their patch. And in addition to that, in New Haven, the first firehouse I was assigned to, there's a massive mural on the wall in the firehouse that that was hand painted, and it's the old steam engine being pulled by the horses. So that paid homage to my where I started in New York, and now where I started in New Haven. And what's interesting with where I started in New York and where I started in New Haven, or where I am in New Haven, both places white fire apparatus. So I always say I started with white fire apparatus, ended with white fire apparatus, hopefully. So anyway, what really sent me to starting Signal 73 is I wanted to continue do training and deliver quality training and deliver the right people for the right jobs to different places for different disciplines. And it was always, when I started in New York, right? When I started at Fire One, or not even before Fire One, like I just had true firemen that taught me and that were true gentlemen, right? So didn't talk down to you, nothing, right? You had Jimmy Smith, right? Who ended up with Squad 41 in New York City. You had Tom Moriarty. He did 40 years in New Rochelle Fire Department, and back in the day, New Rochelle went to a lot of fire. And you had these guys, Pete Bertacci, he was at 39 Truck in New York City. And these guys were just straight gentlemen. Like they did not talk down to anybody. They did not, they didn't, they just weren't rude to anyone. They were just great individuals. And I kind of modeled my teaching off of them, so to speak. I liked the way that they did that, because they're like, all right, hey, you're new in the fire service. I was there once too, or maybe you're not new in the fire service. Maybe you've been here a while, but I'm gonna teach you. But like no, just like down to earth guys, you know what I mean? And not talking down to people, and they were just great. And then I remember, like, as time progressed, I remember guys getting into the fire training center that were not like that anymore. And I'm like, what? And not from the places I just mentioned were very busy, spots and jobs and all that stuff, not, but like kind of like walking around with an air to them. And I'm like, why is this guy, and I just I never liked that. And I always wanted to build a training company that modeled its teaching methods off of those guys. And full circle, Moriarty, Tom Moriarty, Tommy's now, working for me, helping me out. So it's just funny, like, I learned so much from this guy, and now he's, like working with my company, but like I'm learning from him still, like the best part of one of the live burns that I did the other day was I had my lieutenant, Louis Alawa. I have my lieutenant. He's got over 35 years in the fire service between volley and paid. He's got almost 25 in New Haven. I'm listening to him and Tom Moriarty speak, and like at the end of this training class, and I'm just like, I'm just as enamored as the students are. You know what I mean? Like, I'm taking it in the same way they are, because I'm still a student, and I was there where these kids are. I'm still there where a lot of them are, and I just enjoy the learning process, and I believe it should be made fun. And I also believe that like, to send these things home, you need people that are the right people to do this. Not everybody was meant to do it.
Well, I think it goes into your mission statement. It says proper instructors for the proper disciplines.
Correct.
And that's, I mean, essentially, you just defined this question I had for you of what it means in practice. So
yeah, and I think that you need the proper person for. Hey, I might not. So we just had a class that we're putting out now. It's structural collapse awareness for the first arriving company. And one of my buddy Mike Rickaby, he's assigned to he's on a CT USAR task force. He's also structural collapse technician. He's a Marine. He's all this stuff, right? And he loves even when he's he loves like woodworking, right? So not just structural collapse stuff, not just building t-shirt, all like he's just obsessed with wood. Like I call him the hobby horse, because I'm like, yo, what are you building, a hobby horse with a wooden dick today? Like, what are you doing? Like he just loves like wood in general. All right. So he's just obsessed with all this stuff. So I say, hey, Mike, why don't you create a shoring class? Like you're a structural collapse technician. You like the woodwork. Why don't you do the structural? All right, Josh, no problem, right? So he puts together a structural collapse awareness class for me. Okay, basic awareness class, and knocked it out of the park. Right, did a great job. Like that's his niche, right? I got people that like, hey, their niche is pump operator. They're teaching pump operator. I got guys whose niche is rope rescue. They're teaching rope rescue. I'm not going to send you a guy. I'm not going to send you a guy that. For example, say you want water rescue. I'm not going to send you somebody that does water rescue, or that doesn't know shit about water rescue, to teach a water rescue class. You need to have the right person for the right discipline, and I think that means a really good combination of time, experience, and all right, certs are great too. But at the end of the day, and certs are great, but it's what you do with the cert after you have it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like you could be a trench rescue, trench technician, right? That doesn't mean that you're going to fucking shore up, trenches left and right out west. You know what I mean? It's not, that might not be what you can teach. But I think that it's important to send the right person for the right job.
How do you keep training grounded in the street reality without watering down the academic and technical side of it?
So, explain that one again.
How do you keep training grounded in the street reality without watering down the academic and technical side?
So, like, you mean like how do I keep it realistic, so to speak?
Yeah.
So how I keep it realistic is, I mean, I'll give you for example. So the other night, basic Mayday drill, right? Basic Mayday and survival class. All right. So they go in with the rip pack. They're doing their thing. I had a radio, right? I acted as incident command. So what did I do? You all right, buddy? thought you were
I'm
going
good.
down.
No,
All right,
I'm
cool.
not going down.
All right. So, basic Mayday and RIT class. So what did I do? Like, so they go in, they package the guy, right? They get the RIT pack on him. What did I do? I get on the radio and I start calling them like I'm command, because in a RIT situation, say we're getting a down member out of the building, what's command constantly doing?
Bothering the fuck out of you.
Bothering the fuck out of you, right? So I got on the radio and I start breaking their chops, right? I'm like, command to the RIT, command to the RIT. So I keep that going, right? So then after that, I go, okay, command to the RIT. We got fire through the roof, right? So I add that component to it. Command to the RIT. Now we have a collapse on the Bravo side. So they went in the Bravo side, right? So now they can't go out the Bravo side anymore. Now they have to go out the Charlie side. So just adding little things in like that, okay? That was just an example from the other night. But honestly, I think it comes down to, your props, your live fire, your tempo. You got to keep all these things, right? And it's important to have good props. It really is. Shout out to Squad Ironworks. I mean, they do a great job with a lot of their props. They do a lot of metal cutting props, things like that. I just it's out of Canada. They do tremendous work. But keeping your props, and also, I've had my buddy Mike, who did the structural collapse class. He helped me build entanglement props. Having the proper props is really, really important. And also, if you can get acquired structures, acquired buildings, that knocks it out of the park. I mean, that really sends it home, because now you're really practicing in the environment that you're going to play in, so to speak. So it's really, really, it's really important to have acquired structures if you can. I hate, and I thought of a good, I don't know, maybe there's a company that does it, but I hate, it's tough when you have like a sterile burn building, so to speak. When you have a burn building that's got nothing in it, right? So I was thinking, hey, maybe there's a way we could make like burn building furniture. You know what I mean? Like non-combustible burn building furniture that you could add to a burn building to make it more, realistic. Because you think about it, like if you've never been to the burn building before, all right, the heat and the smoke are going to add that pressure for you, right? The heat and the lights out conditions are going to add the pressure for you. But if you're familiar with the burn building you're going to, and you have heat and you have that, that's going to add it to it, but you already know the building's layout, right? So it's like it's a sterile environment almost. So it's like you want to add props to make it better.
Yeah, no doubt. You've taught at FDIC and you've published in Fair Engineering. How has that platform changed the way you think about training others?
I think that, I don't know. I just think everybody learns differently. I think that I think everybody learns differently. Everybody's got a different way of learning, and some people enjoy certain styles as opposed to other styles. I mean, listen, me, I'm a nut job, right? Like my style is different than some guy's style, right? My buddy, like I was just
definitely an acquired taste.
Definitely an acquired taste, right? So there's different strokes for different folks, and I think that it depends on your audience. It depends on who you're teaching and how they learn. I think that definitely plays a role in it, and I just think it's your delivery above all else is important, and not only that, but it's just respecting everybody else too. Respecting them, respecting their ideas and their thought. You know what I mean? Nothing's worse, right, than the best way to kill a dream, right? The best way to kill a dream is to never allow it to be formed anyway, right? So all these people, they have all these ideas, and once you kill their idea like that, that's over for them, right? So while some of these people, they say, hey, let's do it this way, or we should do it that might not be the best way, but say, oh, okay, maybe you could do it that way, but why don't we try doing it? You know what I mean? Like you never want to shut somebody down, because it's like all these people have these ideas and creativity. It's like a spice of life. Like people want to be able to put their ideas and their creativity out there, and to shoot it down right away is just you don't want to do that. So it's important to also listen to what these students have to say. It's not just talking at them. You're holding a dialogue with them.
What's the one drill you'd run in every department if you had the chance?
Oh man, the one drill that I would run if I had the chance. I guess there's not just one. I guess there's a few. Obviously, we want to talk about. We want to talk about getting the first line in place. That's one of the most important drills, right? Getting the first line in place, because we put water on the fire, the problems go away, right? So obviously, getting the first line in place is one of the most paramount drills that we could go over. In addition to that, obviously your basic forcible entry, your basic searches, and a little bit of save your own, right? So learning how to get yourself out of tricky situations. So I don't know if there's necessarily one that I would run, but I would there's a few that I would run.
Which out of those, like, do you see one lacking in places more than the other?
Yeah, I see. Believe it or not, I see like the hose line deployment like
Yep.
lacking in a lot of places. So, I mean, I think and I think one of the other answers you're looking for is search too, right? So, I think that getting the first line in place is definitely. I don't know why, but a lot of people they just don't know how to stretch their pre-connects. They don't know how to stretch their hose loads. They don't know how to flake off the line correctly, and I think that's definitely one of the drills that's lacking is definitely getting that first line in place, and also people helping out getting that first line in place, not walking past the shit and just kicking it to the side, right? Like actually
Mm-hmm.
getting actually helping out, getting that that first fucking line in place. It's very important.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely I don't know why, but it seems like that's one of the things that's happening. Also, like just the like searching, right? So people always say if you can't see your feet, if you can't see your feet, then you should be crawling, right? But the bottom line is if you're in a shitty situation, whether you can see your feet or not, right? You don't want to miss a victim. Okay, whether you can see your feet or not, you don't want to miss a victim. So if you're in a search company, right? If you're doing a search and you're in a search company, you need to be crawling, right? I hate to say it, like, listen, I'm guilty of it too. Sometimes it's not a good habit, but you need to be crawling, right? Because you're crawling, you're in that action position, right? Your profile is now larger, okay, and you have an area that you have a larger footprint, and you're able to pick up a victim a lot easier than just walking, right? If we're walking, hey, we might just kick it, think it's closed. If we're walking, it just might not be in the footprint of where we're at, right? And it's very important to not it's very important to make sure that you're doing that when you're doing a search, and then
Mm-hmm.
also think about the locations you are searching. So it's very important. I think that for some reason people walk a lot. If you're on the engine, something like that, I get it. You want to walk the dog through the place, yeah, whatever, no problem. But if you're on the truck or the rescue, like no matter what, you really should be crawling. And in addition to that, okay, yeah, your footprint's bigger, but also now I'm in a position where I can put my hands up on the wall, right, and I can feel for doorknobs, I can feel for windows. Like I'm guilty of it where I haven't had my hand up and I've missed a door or I've missed a window, right? If you have your hand in the air, all right, you might be able to, or you have your hand up further on the wall, you're going to be able to feel these things, right? The doors, the windows, all these things that are
Mm-hmm.
going to give you the layout and other areas that you may have to search. So I think that's obviously very important. And sometimes you might not even feel that. Going back to 57th Avenue, you remember when Kevin got burned,
Mm-hmm.
okay? His hand was up on a bay window, and he thought it was a wall still. So so just like even if you are doing the right thing, sometimes shit happens.
Yeah.
I was listening to another podcast, or not actually, it wasn't a podcast. It was a recording of a New York City fireman, a lieutenant from I believe the 70s, and he had an apartment that he ended up having to back out of, and but he was doing a search, and he went down a kitchen, right, small galley kitchen, probably had his he was crawling, had his footprint out, right, but the victim was actually it was two kids, and they were under the sink. And he went back on the secondary, and there was an arm hanging out from under the sink. So even like even the areas that you're not thinking of, you might find a victim. And for him, it was obviously the sink, but for us, right, in New Haven, for our building stock, like we talked about, we deal with a lot of knee walls. Okay, we
Yep.
deal with a lot, and what do kids like to do in there? They like to go play hide and seek. They like to have whatever might be going on. They also people turn them into these little kid nook, book nook type things where kids can go hang out. Now that's another area for as far as our building stock goes. Now we got to search for
Right.
got to search knee walls for victims. That's crazy.
On a you've been published in Command Presence. From your perspective, what does Command Presence look like at the firefighter level, not just as an officer?
Well, first off, you just gotta. I mean, I think as far as that goes for a fireman, for not being an officer, I think it's really just being an individual that may be like a go-to guy that people can count on. Hey, I know this guy has experience. I know that this guy knows how to make sound decisions, and has experience on the fire ground. I think that the command presence really is a delivery of yourself on the fire ground. I don't think it involves like yelling or screaming or hey do this, hey do that. I think that as a as a as a non-officer, as a private, right, making suggestions, bringing up certain things, that kind of cues the officer, and especially when you're dealing with younger officers and an older backstep, right? they can you can kind of give cues to your officer. Hey, maybe we could do this better, do this. It's not necessarily delivering orders, but it's just I think it's just how you deliver the information. I think it's also your reputation too, right? Are you are you a more senior guy? Are you known to know what the fire ground's about or emergency situation? I think it has to do a lot with that. I don't think it has so much to do with like delivering orders or hey, I'm in command. It has to do with your knowledge, I think.
Okay. How do you how when you're on the rescue company and how do you build that trust and tempo with it being busy when also the margin for error is like razor thin?
So you said busy, right? So the rescue company is we're I guess for an urban department, we're somewhat busy. The rescue company isn't necessarily nonstop. You got to think, we do about, I think our rescue does, I don't know, I think we might do 12 or 1,300 runs a year. You look at comparable cities that are big, they're not doing much more than that. But because it's like what you're going on, right? We're going on all boxes, technical rescues, elevators, motor vehicle accidents with extrication. We're going on all that stuff. So, like you said, margin of error is razor thin, and really that gets back to training, right? You have to have a lot of training. That's what you like when you come to the firehouse that I'm at. Training is a major thing, right? So we're not as busy. You're not going out the door as much. So now we're training a lot more, right? Like every day on a day tour, for the most part, you're doing a drill. Whether you're drilling on rope or you're drilling on vehicle extrication or lifting or stabilization or search, there's always training going on. So I think yes, or man versus machine, whatever it might be, your margin of error is very small, is razor thin. But at the same time, right, you're not going out the door all the time, so you really have to incorporate that training and a lot of it. So I think that's really what you have to do. And also, the more experience you have, the better. So I think if you start in a busier company and you put your time in a busier company and then you come to, the rescue, I think that adds to your the decision making we've talked about. That adds to your ability to work in emergency situations, right?
Yeah.
So knowing all those basics, right, getting those down and doing some time there and then coming over, right, that's definitely going to help you out because you're not going to build those skills there. You have to build those skills at the engine and truck. If you're not gonna build them at the rescue because you're not going out the door as much. You need to build them there and then bring them to the rescue.
Yeah, you can't rush the process, and I think that's one of the things, especially on busier engines and even on the ambulance. You're getting in the buildings, you're seeing things that you are not going to see,
correct,
necessarily on that company from experience that the engine and the truck work has given you.
Yeah, I mean, you're on the engine, you're doing all this EMS, right? Every time you go on an EMS run, what are you subconsciously doing? You're pre-planning, right? Every time or you're consciously pre-planning, one or the other, right? But every time you go out on the engine, you go on an EMS run, you're doing, that's what you're doing. You're pre-planning. You're checking out these buildings. You're looking at the building stock, right? Every time the truck goes on a water service call, whatever it might be, they're getting that experience. They're getting in the street. They're seeing these buildings. So I totally agree with you. I think that you shouldn't rush the process. One of the things though is like sometimes like the department, depending on like the turnover rate and people retire and all that stuff, sometimes people go to the rescue early.
When it's when we have somebody who makes a mistake and they're struggling, whether it's from a tough fire or a mistake, what's your advice on bouncing back?
I would say get back on the horse, right? You got to get back on the horse and get back in the seat. So I think that I think it's funny because me and my buddy Matt Thomas, again, my buddy Matt Thomas, he was on a rescue with me. I learned a ton from him. He's actually he's got a ton of time in the fire service as well. He's a lieutenant at Engine 4, total dick, but no, he's a great kid. But anyway, we would always quote Top Gun. It was like, in Top Gun, he always goes, send them back up, right? He goes, send them up again, send them up again. Remember after, Maverick loses Cruise or whatever, he goes, send them up again. So I think that after something happens, send them up again, right? You have to send them back out and do that job again. Like if they mess up in a certain discipline or a certain spot, like I wouldn't say necessarily like scold them. I think, yeah, okay. I think that there's got to be some, some talk about it, some
Acknowledgement.
some acknowledgement, some discussion about it. But I don't think necessarily it's like, hey, like you slam that person. I think it's like, okay, you messed up. Let's move on. You're going to get back on the horse. You're going to get back in that position. And the next time you're going to do it right. Guys used to say you're only as good as your last fire, right? You're only as good as your last fire. So you got to make sure your last fire is pretty damn good. So you want to make sure your next fire is pretty damn good. So same thing with anything else, right? You want to make sure that you're getting back in the saddle. I think that if you don't, I think that that's going to discourage people. And then once people are discouraged, they start shutting down. And I think it's really important to not have these people shut down. I think it's important to make sure that you coach them on whatever they may have made a mistake on, and continue from there. For me, myself, when I make a mistake, I'm very, very hard on myself. And I think the harder you are on yourself, I think it's because you care that much. Like I care so much about the fire service. Other people, like when I make a mistake at work, or when I'm very hard on myself because I care that much. So. Yeah. I think that's definitely something that should be sent home. But I think that teaching these people and letting them get back into the groove is what's really important. I don't think just shutting them down is the right move for that.
You're active in the Emerald Society in New Haven.
Yep.
What role does this play in building culture in the department and the community?
So I love New Haven history, and I love the culture of our job, and our job is very old school. It's always been like that, and I just absolutely old school New England department, and I absolutely love it. And the Emerald Society had changed a little bit over the years, and it had gone from it changed hands. So I think it was 2000 maybe 2018 or 17, I can't remember. We started to back up a group of us, and it's just I think it's very important for the tradition of the fire department, and obviously a lot of immigrants and people like that were firemen back in the day, and it's still a big population of Irish individuals on the job, and I think that really instills more of the culture of the fire service, and I think that it's really important to have that group of individuals that all share. I would say the Emerald Society really, it's just a group of individuals that share the common goal of upholding history in a fire department, and also providing service to the community. We do a lot of stuff community related. We provide scholarships. We have something called the Green Tie Dinner, where we provide scholarships to people in the community that are looking for EMT scholarships. We provide scholarships to members of the department that want to do additional training. We've been very active with taking care of members who either are sick or have hardships at home. We're very active in that. We do food drives around the holidays. We assist with certain things for Toys for Tots. We have a golf tournament to raise money. We started the Pipes and Drums. So the Pipes and Drums is obviously very important.
All right, everybody, this is Rob from Frontline Mindset. I want to thank Josh for coming on today. Josh Miller, Rescue 1, New Haven, Connecticut. Thank you for coming on the podcast today. I appreciate it, and we are going to see you guys on the next one. This is Rob from Frontline Mindset. See you guys out there.
National Fire Radio.